Hello and welcome to a surprise actual last video of the year. I totally did not plan on making this video, but I had to make it because I just watched Resident Evil Welcome to Racoon City. As you guys know on the channel, the original Resident Evil is my favorite video game of all time. I have to comment on this movie because holy shit, it's bad, and I need someone else to share in the misery of this movie. And it's one of those, like, how did this get made? Why is this so bad? Why is this so hard to do? That we have to dissect it somewhat. So, happy holidays. Hope you enjoy this video. If you couldn't tell at the beginning, I hated this movie. I loathed this movie. This is the worst movie I've seen in 2021. I haven't done a movie review on my channel in probably over a year. In fact, I don't think I've done any movie reviews on my channel since maybe Rise of Skywalker. So it's been a hot minute. But I will say personally, I have seen some real stinkers this year. I hated Godzilla vs. Kong. I really did not like Black Widow, and No Time to Die was a waste of time. So there's been some stinkers this year out of big blockbuster movies. I'll be honest, going into Resident Evil Welcome to Racoon City, I wasn't expecting much because I do enjoy the Milla Jovovich movies. After the first one, I kind of just always associated that as a separate thing. Like, yes, it uses the Resident Evil name, but it's its own franchise doing its own thing, and sometimes they have characters from Resident Evil. That franchise is more faithful than this shit movie. Oh my god. The first sin this movie makes in the first 5 minutes, no less, is that Dr. William Birkin is actually, like, quote unquote, has Chris and Claire Redfield under his care at the orphanage in Racoon City in, like, I assume they meant the 80s because they show the Golden Girls on TV and they kind of set that tone as it's the 1980s, but that's the first, like, huge disaster, and this is in the first 5 minutes. And the minute that I saw this, I knew this was going to be a shit movie because I'm like, oh man, they've already screwed up 2 characters. How could it possibly get worse? It gets worse. Holy shit. Where do I even begin? Every character in this movie, so every Resident Evil character that you love, Jill Valentine, Wesker, Chris Redfield, Claire Redfield, they're all horribly miscast and horribly characterized. It's like this movie was written by somebody who played Resident Evil 1 and 2 20 years ago, and then one night at a bar was drunk and was like, hey, we should make a new Resident Evil movie because people really don't like those Milla Jovovich ones. Oh, I remember playing those games as a kid. I remember that story. I can make it. It's so bad. And they have bastardized Wesker. They essentially removed Barry Burton from the storyline, and then they took elements of Barry Burton's story and just plunked them onto Wesker. So Wesker is no longer the, scientist that is, undercover as a STARS member and a part of the team. In this movie, they've turned him into a hulking idiot who basically resembles Barry's storyline. Like, it's incredible how stupid they made this character. And it's a real bummer because if you know, as Resident Evil, Wesker is like the big bad of that series up until, the end of Resident Evil 5. So it's ridiculous that they did that to this character. Jill Valentine is handled also extremely poorly, but there's really not much to say about her and how they handled her in this movie. It's kind of more or less like, oh, she's a badass woman that uses a gun, which, like, she's a one-note character in this movie. It's just lame how they did that. The character that is by far the worst in this movie, so bad, so incredibly bad, is Leon S. Kennedy. I couldn't believe some of the shit I saw. They turned him into a freaking idiot. And let me explain. So they give him a backstory for why he was, in Racoon City, why it's his first day. So the backstory they give him in this movie is he's a really bad cop who, while he was in the police academy, he shot somebody in the ass. So his father is like some bigwig in the police somewhere, and got him, got him through the police academy, but got him transferred to Racoon City. It's like mind-blowingly ridiculous. They treat this character like a literal idiot through this entire movie. There is a scene in this movie, and we'll get to it and I'll discuss it. It is so bad. It is the worst movie scene I have seen all year. Worse than anything in Godzilla vs. Kong, which has a lot of stupid scenes. It is unfathomable how bad this is. It's so bad that I had my best friend watch this movie just to tell me, is that scene this stupid? And he 100% agreed with me. It's that stupid. Their whole idea in this entire movie of like, we're going to be faithful to the video games. We're going to be the ones to do it. We're going to make the best video game adaptation you've ever seen. And this is what the director of this movie's been out there, hitting over our heads for like over a year since they started filming this movie. Their idea of being faithful is just sprinkling in some Easter eggs. For example, a zombie wrote Itchy Tasty on a wall. That's cool. Hey, Lisa Trevor's here and she gave Claire the little keys from the mansion. That's cool, right? Like, it's shit like that. And then they do things sprinkled throughout the movie to try and resemble some sort of faithfulness to this franchise, I guess. Like, when they transport to the scene of Claire in the truck with the trucker, they even have the same burger shot like they do in the beginning of Resident Evil 2 remake. Like, cool, but like that's not everything there. Wow, I feel like I'm a rambling idiot right now, but this movie's so friggin' bad. So let's talk about the Leon scene, because this is the worst thing in the movie. So, and I have to preface this. So in this movie, they have a scene where they have all the STARS members that are sitting in their office, and the police chief comes in, who's played by Donald Logue, who by all means is a great actor. He played Bullock on Gotham. He's a great character actor, and a character actor that plays cops very often. He's the police chief in this movie. His scene is so cringeworthy in terms of dialogue. It's one of the worst written scenes I've seen in a while. And it's basically a scene designed to remind you that this movie's set in the 90s. He name drops like 3 or 4 different things to remind you it's the 90s, man. One of the things is he mentions he has a reference to Planet Hollywood. It's ridiculous. And so in this scene, then Leon comes bumbling in and he throws a fit and goes, "Hey, get back to the desk. You need someone to watch the front desk." In the very next scene, there is a shot of Leon who is listening to a Walkman playing some TLC 90s song or something, and he falls asleep. And that truck driver just freaking barrels the truck through the front of this police station. He sleeps through all of this. And only until the police chief comes in and shoots his gun at the burning man or zombie that walks through the front door is he woken up. And I sat here with my mouth open, and I just was like, did I just witness this shit? It is this dumbest scene I've seen in a movie all year, probably last year too. It's just so questionable. Like, and it's shit like that through this entire movie. They ruin every character that you love from Resident Evil. They've taken little bits and pieces here, but they basically tried to combine Resident Evil 1 and 2 and then make their own story, and none of it works. Not a single plot point in this movie works in any way. The whole idea of having Chris and Claire as previous orphans under William Birkin is disastrous, and it's only furthered by the end of the movie when you get to the CG, and it's like almost as bad as Venom 2 CG. It's really, really bad. It's like they had a budget, but they used all the budget on some set designs and then had none for CG effects. So all those effects look really bad in this movie. I have nothing positive to say about it. Like, it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And it's just, it has the age-old question of, why make this movie? Like, who was this movie designed for? Was it designed for Resident Evil fans? Because they sure didn't like it. It made under $5 million at the domestic box office and $30 million worldwide. It's a critical and commercial disaster, and there's no way they're going to make a sequel to this. If they do, it has to be like direct-to-DVD or something. I'll also love to point out that this movie took 29 days to hit digital platforms because it's a real piece of shit, and I'm sure some exec somewhere at Screen Gems was like, just put it on digital. And like, it got me because I was like, man, I really want to see that. Don't think I'm gonna go to the theater to see that, especially in the middle of a pandemic. But it hit digital last night, and I was like, I'm gonna watch it and see how bad it is. And it's wretched, it's vile, it's downright stupid. Don't watch it. Don't support it. Shame on the director for trying to get fans' hopes up and say, this is this great, I'm so faithful to the franchise. This is a man who wrote and directed the movie. I should have been warned before I watched it. This is the same guy who directed The Strangers Pray at Night, which I love the original Strangers from 2008. It's a fantastic horror movie. That sequel is utter shit. They took everything good about the original movie and just made it trash. I think he's also directed 47 Meters Down, which is also a bad movie. So I shouldn't have expected a lot from this. But when you say dumb shit like, hey, when I met the actor that was going to play Leon, I couldn't think of anybody else playing this role. Is it because you wanted somebody to play a literal moron? Like, I don't get it. I sat stunned through this entire thing, and when it was over, I couldn't believe what I saw. So this is just a quick fire. I'm not even gonna grade this movie. If I did, I guess I'd give it an F because it sucks. It's like, in terms of like an A being the best and like A Cure for Wellness, which I think is the worst movie I've ever seen, it's like a hair above that movie. It's that bad. So if you're a massive Resident Evil fan like me and you have an itch for some reason to see a Resident Evil movie, just go watch the Mila Jovovich movies. They're really not that bad. This is just the worst thing they could have ever done. And, Capcom, if you're out there, you ever watch this video, don't make another Resident Evil movie for like 10 years. Just focus on the games and maybe trying to write a better story for Resident Evil 9 than Resident Evil 8, because that wasn't great either. Anyways, I just wanted to throw my thoughts out on it because it's so bad. And maybe I have a warning here that anybody watches this, will stop and think about watching Resident Evil. Welcome to Racoon City or something like that. As always, happy holidays. I'll see you at the beginning of January 2022. Until next time.